given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. By the way, before I introduce the topic, guys, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. Link is in the description. I keep on forgetting to say it. I'll say it right now. Already caught you. You're trapped. So now I'll get the topic in there because I know people be fast forwarding to that announcement. So I'm going to surprise people randomly. Hey, guys, so real quick, I want to talk about how understaffed facilities can force our staff to violate policies and procedures. But more importantly, what should frontline do when they're put in a situation where they feel they are violating policy and procedure? And by the way, guys, understaffing doesn't just affect custody. I'm going to get the medical side. Connie's on as well. But also anything that affects the rights of the inmate population, the rights of the employees, more specific. Again, understaffing could affect anything from education, maintenance, social services, whatever our function is, and our ability to get the function done in a safe and secured manner. And guys, obviously, most of our functions is to serve the inmate population as well as protect ourselves in doing so. So sometimes when we don't have the proper staffing, what are we sacrificing? And does that sacrifice include a violation of policy and procedure? And if that's the case, what are we doing about it? Are we venting or are we document? I mean, we'll get to that too. But again, we're going to talk about how understaffed facilities, maybe violating some policies and procedures. And then basically, more importantly, hey, guys, what should we do if we're caught in a situation where we feel that we are violating policy and procedure? And who do I have with me on today's show? I recently just saw her on Oprah. She was on Oprah, and she was discussing this great book she wrote called The Cage Was Her Cocoon. There's no introduction here. I'm just going to bring her on. We all know her name by now. Don't even introduce yourself, ma'am. We all know.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's
you guys have no idea what I go through with Anthony Gangi. It is such a great time when we are able to get on and start talking about what we're passionate about. So, Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. And I mean, honestly, when we talked about this particular topic, it really puts us in a sticky situation sometimes, as we're understaffed. And it's not a situation that's unique to any one place. So, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing where tonight's dialogue goes.
Yes. And by the way, this is definitely a needed dialogue because it's kind of recommended. I'm not going to go specific to the story in which I decided, hey, let's do this topic. But I believe that the person that's going to watch this, who I'm going to send it to, is going to understand why this topic was basically for them, but definitely something that could also have a wider appeal. Now, guys, don't forget the show is brought to you by Guardian RFID. So from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit GuardianRFID.com for more information. Also, if you are looking to seek higher education, and let's bring experience back into the classroom, American Military University, guys. They support what we do here in corrections. They are great advocates for us. And if you guys are looking to get a degree in criminal justice and you want to go out there and teach those young minds, it'd be excellent if you guys decided, hey, I'm going to bring experience into the classroom. Check out American Military University, guys. It really is a great school. They care for what we do, and that's how it starts for us anyway. So, Connie, obviously, when we don't have enough staffing, the reason why I'm saying we violate policies and procedures is because we start finding shortcuts to get the job done. Now, I know a lot of people may stay focused on those emergent parts of corrections like custody and, medical and, because they feel, okay, that's where the greatest liability is. But technically, any understaffed department is going to have an effect on the facility as a whole. And obviously, one of the less known effects, but it does exist, is staff that become overwhelmed and disenfranchised. But we're going to kind of talk more about the violations of policy and procedure. So I know right off the bat from the custody perspective, when you have a facility that's not properly staffed, and again, most likely it could be about the incentives to bring people in or to maintain people, that just we wind up losing people that we either cannot replace, or good experienced people that, you know what, it's not worth my time and effort anymore. So again, it's in order to kind of fix what that understaffing concern is, we have to be competitive out there, guys. We have to introduce incentives that want people to be in this profession. And I'm talking about as competitive as other law enforcement professions, and even, I guess, even for other sides, the medical side, whatever it is, we have to be competitive. So, people don't look at working in corrections as I had to settle. You don't want that. You get it from the medical side. Well, I had to settle. I had to work here. No, this is a great career to be in. Why do you think of that? Well, most likely how they think about that is based on the incentives. Because trust and believe, if our incentives were great, people would never think they were settling. They'd think it would be a choice. So how about we get great incentives and we trick people into thinking they choose to work with us? That it's possible. Just whatever. Don't laugh, but it is what it is. But so just I'm giving some generalities real quick. But one thing about custody side, and I definitely want to hit up medical too. One thing about custody, when you have an understaffed facility, you're going to have staff that's not going to be effective at doing their job. Couple of reasons. First reason is, is there enough of a response to back me up if I'm going to go after that contraband? Or if I'm going to stop that code? Where's my backup coming from? Is my backup coming from the amount of people I have in this facility? Do I have enough? Or is it coming from outside where there could be a delay? And, is it worth that delay? I mean, when you have people that are there in the wings ready to help, you're going to get staff that's ready to do their job, because they know that I could take this risk because I know in a few minutes my people got me, and they start going after what needs to get done to run a safer and secure facility. We also know we get more focused on some parts of the operations, like let's get these inmates to programs, let's get this facility moving, but having said that, what do we sacrifice when we have understaffed facilities in order to get that done? We don't have enough people to do searches today. So let's keep this facility running at normal, but let's use the staffing that we would have used for the searches today, and let's go ahead and let's start using them for helping out, standing in those areas where the programs are going to be, or facilitating those movements, because now you're starting to shift whatever manpower you have, whatever shift, whatever. Yeah, I like to say the word manpower. I apologize, guys. Don't take offense to that, but I'm used to that word. But you know what I'm saying. Whatever the staffing is, you're going to have to start shifting staffing to where you feel is the biggest priority. And sad thing to say is sometimes searches aren't seen as a priority because they're preventive. I get it, and they should be a high priority, but people are more worried about the now. And sometimes you don't realize that, okay, well, I'm going to worry about programs, but now I just sacrifice searches. The next thing you know, contraband is building and increasing, and the inmates are just walking around, not caring anymore because no one's doing their job, which is technically searching and being preventive, getting that contraband, getting those weapons, trying to maintain a safe and secure facility. So we have an environment that's conducive to programming. Guys, everybody may think, okay, programs are priority, let's sacrifice searches, but guys, it's the searches and stuff that help programs run. It helps provide an environment that's conducive. So it's like the chicken that laid, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Guys, if you don't have the security in mind and you're not doing that, then, you're not really having an environment that's conducive to any type of programming. And the other concern I have, and I'm sure there's more besides staff that's overwhelmed and tired and exhausted, working, 4 or 5 hours, double shifts, just, with no break in between, not being able to have a consistent schedule with their family. So their family life has gone to shit. The other concern that you also have is, the officer versus inmate ratio. How many officers do you have watching? And it's not even so much the inmate number, but the different pods. You know what I mean? So sometimes people are like, well, I'm one officer and I have to watch 80 inmates. Okay, but are they all in your view? Can you see them all? Okay, well, I mean, I would like to have 2 or 3. I get it. But my bigger concern, if I had to choose one, because they're all a concern, but if I had to choose one, it's when you're leaving an area unsupervised to go check out another area. I'm not a big fan of that. So basically, if you're one officer covering 4 areas, which means that you have 4 areas, inmates in all those areas, and there are going to be moments where your eyes cannot be on everything and everyone. So again, for me, it's more of the layout and your area of responsibility. Can I see everything that I'm in control of? And right now, we don't. And when you have facilities that are understaffed, and we'll get to this, is that sometimes those posts that are designated for 2 or 3 people may only operate with 1. And now, what are we doing when we have to be that officer now? And we're assigned to that post, and now we're being told, hey, you just don't have pod A. But today, because such and such and such and such called out, you have pod B and pod C. Do you just go, okay, I can get all 3? Or do you say, well, wait, Sarge, hold on. Before I just want to document and take note of some of the concerns I have today because I have to cover these 3 areas. Hey, Connie, I'm sure medical may see the same type of understaffed issues. How does understaffing affect medical? And obviously they're emergent, right? So
so from the medical side of the house, essentially we have staffing minimums that should be met, depending on the layout of the facility and the standard of care that's provided. So like in some facilities where they're accredited, it's actually written that there's a, number of staff that should be on. And when you don't meet those staffing minimums, you do violate the requirements of your accreditation, or you actually jeopardize your accreditation in that way. I think the other thing that's really important to note here is that when you're not meeting your staffing minimums, it's very difficult to provide the community standard of care to this population. Because let's face it, you got a handful of medical people who are on the compound. You've got tons and tons of people on a caseload, right? And so it really matters that you can actually see the people on your caseload from day to day, because we're really trying to burn down those lists. We need to get at least touch base with each person on that list within a certain period of time. And when we're unable to do that, what it does is it pushes the issues that the inmates are having back and then back and then back. And so, I think about, an inmate who came down, they were on the list to see the dentist. At the initial point of contact, it was just a toothache. By the time he got to the dentist, the clinic was canceled. The dentist is not here. We only have one hygienist. Like those things start to, sort of snowball. And ultimately, by the time he was in to see someone, here's this abscess on the gum, and here's the tooth has to get pulled and all this stuff. And so, I feel like sometimes we don't necessarily focus in on what is the long-term impact of being short-staffed. When you have multiple medical units and they may be spread out throughout the compound, that means all of your resources are spread out throughout the compound, right? But then as an administrator or as nursing supervisor, we're trying to figure out, okay, which is the least critical area that we can cut for today so that we can still meet those broader concerns, right? So, we've gotten to we know that MAT, we can't cut MAT. Whoever's manning that, whoever's doing medication, whoever's in mental health, who's ever in the medical clinic, like those are posts that can't be cut. But if the census goes up in the medical clinic or in the mental health unit, that means you require more staff to meet those needs in those units. And when we leave our staff vulnerable, because that's what we're doing when we're understaffed, that means they're not getting to all the care plans. Maybe, they're trying to make sure everyone gets their meds, but like, what else are we now not doing? We usually have like a chronic care clinic. And so, okay, we know this is chronic care. And while we don't want to skip out on the chronic care clinic, we need extra support because the census went up in medical over the weekend, right? We came in, we had these intakes, and now look at what we've got. And yeah, you know what? One nurse working the floor isn't going to work. One nurse making sure wound care is taken care of. All the diabetics are taken care of. It just doesn't work. And I mean, I can go on and on about the challenges on the medical side when we are short-staffed. But, you know, I think for us, we want to make sure the dialogue is hopefully helpful, right? Because, I mean, throwing the problems out there, it's great, but what are some of the solutions? So, like, you know, I definitely am looking forward to us talking about that when we get there.
Did you say for us or for Russ?
For us.
I heard, guys, Russ is always a memory in our show. He's not here today, but I could have swore you said for Russ. Guys, we get a chance. And plus, we'll help my minutes watch rewind. Tell me if you said for Russ and put in the comments below. Was it for Russ or for
Oh,
us?
my God.
I said for Russ. But just, you know, hey, it did sound like for us. It could have chance to rewatch an episode. Get my views up, man. I mean, I always expect one from you. You know, give me one. Run something else in the background. Let this show run. Just give me the full play. But yeah, you know what's funny, guys? I think honestly, a lot of people don't realize how bad an understaffed facility is, and my biggest concern is when we get used to it and it becomes routine. So here's what my concern is, guys. Sometimes, you know, at first, let's say you start having this facility that's losing out on its numbers, right? So maybe, at least from the custody side, I'm sure medical, we can hear that perspective as well. I can't really talk too much on that, but maybe you can help me with that. But I'll give you my perspective real quick, is that, you know, we may run in like a lockdown mode, you know, but we can't run this way forever. And then after a couple of days, it's like, hey, guys, we got to get this facility moving. We know your numbers are low. But we got to start getting some type of daily operations going. So we start, okay, well, let's see what we can do. And we start trying our best with our limited numbers to run a fully operational facility as safe as possible, both safe for staff, for the inmates, the people that work there, the volunteers. I mean, if you have volunteers, I'm sure you shouldn't have any volunteers or anybody coming in when you're understaffed. But I'm sure when they start, you know, trying to push things towards normal operations, when you're understaffed, eventually those volunteers start trickling in, you know, because again, you know, we start seeing the routine of it all. And plus the sad thing is when we have new boots that are coming in, when we're understaffed, they may not even realize themselves that we're operating under, because they may not be aware of what proper operations is supposed to look like. Maybe
Can
I'm supposed
to add something to you?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you said the thing about the volunteers, I think one of the things we have to realize is that as the volunteers do trickle in, if we aren't staffed properly, it leaves the volunteers vulnerable, right? And I know we already have concerns about contraband, about the volunteers not really knowing what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I mean, I feel like, you know, this understaffing issue literally impacts every other area that you possibly could want to run. And so it's even more dangerous when we're trying to force the staff to run normal operations when there aren't enough bodies available.
Right. And guys, here's the thing, guys. That's where, when we start getting caught up in that routine, that's when we start working on practice as opposed to policy and procedure, because at that point there, unless nothing's happening, people don't look at policy. They're just, hey, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. And then when something does happen, all of a sudden, these policies starts coming into play. And, you know, it's true. And we become reactionary. And a lot of the people are like, hey, you know, we mentioned that this was a concern. Really? I mean, I'm hoping we did. I'm hoping that we did this thing called document. But sometimes we get so lost in this routine because we find it also to be convenient. You know, it's true. You know, sometimes it's like, you know what, when you have that supervisor that is the one that's in charge of making sure we have the proper staffing, but lately we've been operating on these numbers, maybe they stop making the effort because it's more convenient now just to operate what we got right now instead of me spending all day looking for more people. Plus, we operated this way yesterday. Why can't we do it again today? Why can't we do it again the next day? So the funny thing about routine, which could obviously be our worst enemy here, is that the biggest concern I start to get is maybe when it first starts to happen, you get people that understand it's emergent, but they still have concerns, so they make it known. Hey, Sarge, I don't like running these 3 pods. You know, I'm just going to let you know. And maybe they'll write in the book, in charge of Alpha Bravo Charlie Pod, whatever it is. Or, hey, I didn't get a chance to do searches, so you're telling me you don't want me to do my searches because you need me to do this. Okay, I just want to make it known. So maybe at the very beginning, you're getting staff that's documenting it. But the problem is when it starts to become routine and the staff now starts to accept this as normal. Now they stop documenting. Now they stop noting their concerns. So all of a sudden, since, no harm, no foul, right? We're understaffed, but the facility's still running as it is. Now we're totally in reactionary mode, by the way. We're not doing anything preventive. The people are not writing their concerns anymore. There's no documents. And now eventually, let's say the facility's quiet for a few months and something happens. All of a sudden, they're going to say, well, hey, this was a problem. We told you this facility was understaffed. Yeah, 6 months ago you told us. Should have been doing it every day. Every day you're assigned that post that requires you to abandon one post to go to another. Every day you're told to violate policy and procedure where you can't do your searches today. Or again, you're one officer touring in an area that requires two. The moment you start to accept it and the moment you stop documenting that concern, then people stop looking for concerns. So every day, in my opinion, when you face that understaffed issue, treat it as if it's a new thing happening. Don't get caught in the routine where you stop writing about it because it's like, oh, well, this is how we are now. No, because now you're starting to accept it. And then when you go to voice your concern, the funny thing is someone's going to say, okay, you made that concern 6 months ago, but you've also worked this post every day for the course of 6 months. Why not write something up every day? When it comes to understaffed facilities, guys, and getting that word out there, I'm sad to say, but you have to be annoying. And then the other thing on top of that is you have to be specific. Hey, I was told that I had to work this. By the way, policy says this, but there's not enough staffing. So I'm told that I have to do this. And when I had this concern, I brought it up to Sergeant such and such, who, said they would look into the matter. So now you did your part. Now let's go talk to Sergeant such and such. When you walked in and spoke to that officer, what did the officer tell you? And what did you do? Well, I told him, if you have a good sergeant, I brought his concern again to the lieutenant. Again and again and again. Every time the person brings me the concern, I bring it up. Supervisors, frontline, big part of this. The concern comes to you, bring it up. Bring it up every day. But if you get another higher supervisor that says, okay, we know this guy has a concern, and all of a sudden you stop bringing it up, you're at fault now.
So ownership, in my opinion, because each time that you had that conversation, you've put ownership on someone else. And I think that we have to be comfortable putting the ownership where it belongs. So when we're not documenting and we start accepting this routine as part of our everyday, like this is it now, right? It's not it. And so I don't know if you guys took note when Anthony said, hey, so you're telling me that I should not do X, Y, and Z because I don't have the time or the support or whatever that is. Even in those conversations, like you've got to be strategic in understanding that open dialogue really is going to make any manager take a pause, right? Because you have shifted that ownership of the problem to the manager. It is no longer, I'm not sure, they're not complaining, no one ever told me. It is, so I'm not only am I bringing the problem to you, but I'm also getting your buy-in that it's okay for me to not follow policy. It's okay for me to not do my job because I shifted ownership in the conversation to the manager.
I love what you said, because even if you get that management that says, okay, we know about this already, then you come back and say, well, I still got to write it because it's still happening.
Yep.
You may know about it, but it hasn't changed. So the moment you stop writing is the moment where people think it's okay. Because I guarantee you, people are going to look at it and say, well, you didn't have this concern, only once. Now you have the concern, then you want to come back and say, well, that's because this facility's understaffed. Well, okay, but you only wrote about it once. I have seen really persistent frontline that will, as soon as they come on that post, part of their, daily assignments at this point is writing down their concerns. Why? Again, Policy says there's supposed to be 2. I'm the only one assigned again. And it's not, they're not being insubordinate because they're still doing their job.
Yeah.
You know, but they're forwarding up the concern. If God forbid anything happens to this officer, look how many times they documented it. And obviously, when you document something, you should keep personal record for yourself as well. If you could do it through emails, I would recommend emails. But if you have to do it through reports, if you can get a copy of the report or a control number, something that shows that your reports are being submitted. And I don't care if it's a duplicate or whatnot, because again, the duplicity and holding different people responsible in that as well. Maybe one day it's Sergeant Gangi. So I'm going to tell Sergeant Gangi. And
the email that you send, even if the exchange wasn't via email, the email should say, "Thanks, Sergeant Gangi, for hearing me out today. I just wanted to follow up to make sure you understood my concerns," right? Because a lot of times we have these conversations in passing, and then we don't have a record of the conversation, right? And how many things happen by the time Sergeant Gangi left your unit and he got to his office, right? 5 people, 6 people, 20 people could have talked to him. And so even if that exchange you had with Sergeant Gangi wasn't something that, you know, it was formal, it was an informal exchange, you said something, it is a good practice to follow up that exchange with an email, because you do want the documented record that you brought this issue forward.
Yeah, and I agree, and I want to add something too. So I like that. You know, hey, Sergeant Gangi, this is my concern. And then the next day, maybe hey, Sergeant Gangi, this is my concern. And the next day, maybe it's Sergeant Alleyne. You know, hey, Sergeant, oh yeah, Sergeant Gangi already told me. Yeah, I know, but now I'm telling you. So now the funny thing is, the more people you tell, the more it pushes on the agency. So maybe Sergeant Gangi, at first, we can hold Sergeant Gangi responsible. Maybe he didn't tell us. We don't know. Maybe we could point the finger at Gangi. But then eventually you also told Sergeant Alleyne. You told Sergeant Hamilton. And there's the same reaction from all the sergeants. Nothing happened. Well, that's a group of sergeants. So that's not really the individual sergeants. Now, that looks to be an agency concern. That looks to be a culture concern. So again, you're getting the information out there and you're directing it to people that have a job to do as supervisors. Now, if they start to get discouraged by their higher ups, now they're going to start pointing the fingers where they got to go. Hey, I brought this concern up multiple times to my lieutenant, and they're going to start dropping names. But eventually, I will tell you one thing, Connie, tell me if you agree with this. Once you start becoming annoying with those reports and you start holding people responsible, I will guarantee you the people that you're holding responsible to are starting to become annoying with their reports.
Yep.
Right? Would you agree? And then it kind of triples up?
Absolutely agree. And, you know, when they say, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, quite honestly, they want to stop you from writing. They want to stop you. Whatever they need to do to remedy this situation, they're going to do it. And so if you need 2 extra people there, they're going to figure out a way to get 2 extra people there. That way, this chain of documentation can stop, right? So they brought this forward. This was our response to what was brought forward, right? But if they cannot show that they've responded and provided you with some sort of relief or some sort of guidance in this process, the reality is that if anything were to happen while you were on post, you have documentation to support that you raised the issue, you informed everyone in your chain of command that you could inform, and that you continue to do it. You didn't just stop because, you know, it became status quo. You continue to do it. And so I just, you know, want to encourage whoever is experiencing this right now to really make sure that you have tight documentation, that you are including people's names in there. Like, this is who I spoke to. This is what I told them. And on the back end, you want to make sure that you're sending those communications to whomever you have talked to, because you don't want it to be that things get lost in translation somewhere. Right? Oh, it got mixed up in all the emails, or I told someone, but they forgot about it, or I never said anything again. So as the manager, I'm thinking, oh, the issue is resolved. I didn't hear anything else about it, you know? So I think this is such a great dialogue.
Yeah. And Connie, you know what's something else, guys? I want to touch on being new. And the reason why is being new, we may not understand what is right or wrong until we make the effort to understand. And what I mean by that is you may get so absorbed up in practices that you may not realize that you're being asked to violate procedure. Now, one thing I do want to mention, guys, if you know this is going a concern and you want the concern addressed, as me and Connie mentioned, you're not making the effort to do it, then that's on you. That's on nobody else but you. It's hard to do it. It's not easy. But there's never nothing easy about change. Mm-hmm. Someone has to step up and make that initiative. You can't expect other people to do it for you. If you know what's wrong and it's happening to you, then you have to do what you need to do to make sure it doesn't happen to you again. And maybe if it works, then it won't happen to anybody else. But it takes one person to say, I'll give a scenario. I'll give a scenario that we can relate to in today's world. It takes one person to say, I'm not going to sit on the back of the bus anymore. Fair enough, right? Why not?
Fair enough.
Fair enough, Connie. So I have Connie for one more show. No, but you get the message. The point is,
no,
you
absolutely.
can't sit there and bitch and moan and then say, yeah, well, no one's doing nothing. Let me see what you've done. Show me what you've done. If all these things happen to you, show me all those reports that you've written, or do you want other people to do it for you? And the other thing is, again, when you're new, it's still no excuse, because you should be understanding policies and procedure. And when you're working that unit, take a hold of the book and say, you know what, something doesn't feel right about this, and read. And if you see there's a concern, bring it back to the supervisor. Say, hey, listen, I know I'm new. I don't mean to really start a fuss over this, but I have to. I notice policy and procedure still says 2 people. You know, only by myself. Because the funny thing is, when you have understaffed facilities, let's be honest, guys, there's no memos that are telling you to operate under. There's no policies that are now telling you to operate under. They're not changing the policies. They're not changing the procedures. So you automatically have something you can go back to now to say, these are my concerns, because no one's changing it. There's no one in their right mind in management that's probably going to say, you know what, we're understaffed. Change the whole policy and tell them one officer can run all 4 pods. No, the policy is still going to be the same. So you have that policy that you can lean on every day. And if by chance someone decides to put their name on, let's say, a memo, you got policy that could still challenge the memo based on safety and security, OSHA concerns, if you will. But there's so many windows here that, Connie, when someone comes up to me and says, I'm new, or let's say someone comes up to you and says, I'm new, I don't want to stir up a pot, what would you say to them?
There is no pot to stir. Like, you're new, and if there's a policy, there's a procedure that's not being followed, bring it forward, right? Like, because the stirring of the pot is only someone's perception, right? It is the perception that what people are doing is not right, and like that they know it, right? Like, they know it's not right. But in a lot of places, you know, it's sort of like survival, right? When you are working under these circumstances, you've been asking, pleading, documenting, and there's still no help. Now you're in this survival mode. And so the new person coming in, like, if anything, you're the best person to bring it forward, because the policy is fresh in your mind. And when you bring it forward, it's because this is what I learned. You guys just taught me this. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Why aren't we doing it? Help me understand, right? And I think if as, you know, I don't want to say old timers, but if as those of us who have more tenure, right, are willing to step up and say, you know what, these policies were created, right, based on evidence, right? So if a particular post, you know, just kind of bring us back a second. If a particular post says there should be 3 people, there was a lot that went in to the creation of the policy that said 3 people were the right number. They were considering all the moving parts, because just to think, sometimes the policies are made in a bubble, right? They're just looking at, so what's all the tasks that have to be accomplished? within this particular space or this time, and who do we need, what do we need in order to get it done. So when those policies are put in place, it's because there's been a feasibility study, there's been evidence that showed this is what we need. A lot of times it is when this post was manned with just one person, here are all the negative outcomes. And so we changed the policy to say we need 3 people because all of these things happen. So just because we may not have the history, it still makes the policy is still valid. And it's always something solid for us to stand up on. So new person who's thinking they're stirring the pot, don't worry about stirring the pot. You coming forward is probably the best thing because it will help you understand, like, so why do we do it this way? And the person who's explaining it to you, who during their explanation, they're realizing that it's against the policy, they're going to have a hard time convincing you that you're doing the right thing, right? And like for most of us on the job, we want to know that we're doing the right thing. We want to be good stewards of our experience, of our education, of all of the stuff that we bring to the table, and that we're helping new people get it right, to do it right. So, you know, say what you got to say and don't worry about stirring the pot.
And legally, you're protected. Whistleblower Act. You know, you're protected from retaliatory actions that definitely, you know, if you have a safety concern, it's your right to bring it up, you know. And if anybody wants to bring that into a lawsuit, I'm going to tell you something, guys. If they want to retaliate on you and you want to take a lawsuit, hefty money gets awarded for retaliatory actions. Whistleblower Act is no joke. You violate that, you take sums of money back. I'm sure there's some people here that probably relate to that and want some lawsuits. So again, I mean, it was pretty much a quick dialogue. The key here is that we also have a responsibility in making the change. You know, it goes beyond, you know, whispering and expecting shit to happen. I mean, you really got to get known. I mean,
sure. Bleep button. Where's your bleep button?
Oh, bleep, bleep. Oh, see, late now. I already said it. But you know, sometimes you have to get yourself out there, scream on the mountaintop.
Yeah.
And then, you know, because in the end, guys, the key is that, sad to say, but the world works on liability. You know, you're putting it out there. Yes, at first, maybe a courtesy, let them know. But eventually it's like, hey, guys, you have no care for my safety, so I'm going to make it known. Because in the end, if something happens to me, I got to do what I can to protect my family. You know, you have to do what you can to protect your family. And if you're not making note of these concerns every day, eventually someone's going to say, yeah, okay, we did have an understaffed facility, but this officer never said they had a problem, you know, doing their job. I mean, it's crazy how people tend to point the finger, you know, and that's what we have to do is you have to always make yourself on the offensive. If you have a good case, you always have to put yourself on the offensive, which means that you have to always be ready to, you may have to piss people off because people are going to know that when you do it, oh shit, you took the finger off yourself. You took a way out of it. So like if I wanted to throw something back at you, you just threw it back at me. So people aren't going to be happy about that. Yeah. No one's going to be happy. But the funny thing is, when you have a supervisor or when you have, you know, that wants the right thing to happen, they want you to do that because they know that they're also going to do what they got to do to bring it up to the right people. The only people that really get mad at that are the ones that aren't going to take the next step. And that's my opinion. If I know you give it to me, I'm going to take the next step. I'm not mad at you. So let me play my role. Let me pass it to where I got to pass it to. And let's see. And I guarantee you, once something happens, they see the liabilities coming. Oh, all of a sudden, these issues that couldn't be fixed, they're fixed. Ain't that the craziest thing, Connie?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, that's just what it is. I mean, we live in a world where liability is a big deal, and we're trying to do anything and everything we can to mitigate that liability. And, you know, any space that you find that we're vulnerable, and staffing is a big one. Understaffing is a big vulnerability. And the liability is so significant because understaffing means that there are some posts somewhere that's not being manned. There are some tasks, some daily duties that need to be fulfilled that's not being fulfilled. You know, something has to give in order for us to run at a staffing minimum or for us to run without our being in full capacity, right? And so when we think about the liabilities that lie out there because we aren't, staffed adequately, it really just, I think, makes our entire system vulnerable. I don't, yes, if we look at just facility, you mentioned protecting our brothers and sisters. I'm thinking if I don't write the report, if I don't raise the issue on my shift, I'm not protecting the next shift that comes in, right? Because I have an obligation to say, look at all the stuff that I couldn't do on my shift, which is probably going to fall on the next shift. And then the next shift is going to have that experience, and then they can't fulfill all their responsibilities on the shift, and that's going to fall on the next shift. And so I think when we look at it as a whole, it's important that we come forward and say, listen, this doesn't work. I'm unable to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to have to leave it for my partner who comes in on the next shift. And so collectively, we can change the system if all of us are writing. Are all of us writing? Are all of us documenting? Are all of us holding, each other accountable, right? And not taking it personal. Because if I couldn't do it on my shift and I let my partner know that coming on the next shift, I couldn't get it done, and she let her partner know on the next shift that she couldn't get it done, we're all in this together, trying to make sure we somehow affect change. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I even said, be your brother and sister's keeper. Like Connie said, it's a great way to be that. You know what? Share something else before we go. So I'm writing a book, and this kind of falls into it. I'm writing a book on what you need to expect on your first day. And this book is requiring a lot of contributions from different people. So technically, it's a policy, if you want, on it requires multiple staffing. But I've been asking Connie to submit her story. I'm still waiting. But I've been hold on, because I'm wrong. We had this whole dialogue, and I'm still operating like I'm still moving forward, violating policy, because technically this book requires the contribution of others. So what I'm doing now to protect myself is I'm putting Connie out there. Connie, I need your story. Got to get to chapter 2. Hey guys, just messing around, but
let me tell you guys something, right? I've now told this story at least 3 or 4 times, and I started writing this story, but you guys don't see on the back end what Anthony has me doing, right? Like he wants me to join every podcast there is. Do you see his face? And he can't deny it, right? And anything else that he needs, I'm there to support him. So I am working on the story. I told him that I've been trying to keep myself accountable to a deadline, and I keep missing it, which is bad.
Wait, hold on. Wait a second, Connie. I thought this whole time my podcast and my Tear Talk show was helping you. Damn.
Oh my God.
You're helping
Listen.
Me. No, hey guys, she's the best.
It all helps.
That's ever happened
it helps
to my
us
channel.
both. It helps us
but
both.
Let me just obviously we could joke like this, but not only during our time knowing each other, besides the fact that she had such value to this channel, and obviously in my opinion, I'm sure the opinion of our followers, she's also family now. She is we're buying a house, and she did promise not only to come over for the housewarming, which is a few hours away, but to donate furniture to the Gangi Fund. Gangi has no fucking furniture soon. So Gangi didn't need, hey, Connie's like, we'll have dinner. Sure, bring the table. You know what I mean? That's an awkward request, right? That's an awkward request. Never got that one before. Bring the table.
So what do you need for dinner?
Too.
Bring the table.
Bring the table. Listen, we may not have food. We'll just look at each other.
Look
at each other. But hey, Connie, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
I guess what I would say is, this understaffing issue is a problem nationwide. Like, we know that we're struggling to get people. Turnover is really, we've got such a high turnover. And, I think we're still trying to position ourselves as an employer of choice, right? And it won't be easy for us to get there, because our reality is that we work in a very challenging environment, and everyone's not made for it, right? So we're gonna see the turnover, but if there's a way for us to prepare for that turnover, and in the meantime give our staff, give the workforce the tools they need to be successful, like, we need to make every effort to do that. And I know that we've seen in the news different facilities being closed, and people are shifting the workforce from one place to another, hoping to meet those staffing requirements. But when we don't meet those requirements, we do leave our folks vulnerable. And I think we have a responsibility to not do that to them.
Yeah, and you know, guys, I put myself on the screen purposely when I was looking at the phone, and then I looked up. I was surprised I saw myself on the screen, and then put the phone away. But I put myself on the screen. But Connie, I agree. I agree 100%. Guys, the reason why we have this episode, one thing is to let people know we have concerns. We do have people from the outside looking in, but to let also people know what our role is in addressing those concerns. You know, are we doing enough? And I'm very curious to see who has gone that extra mile, like we said. You know, and again, it's not just about getting your voice heard, but it's also about that liability. If something was to happen to you, you know, what are you doing to make sure that your family's taken care of? You know, the people that you're leaving behind now has something that they can lean on. You know, so again, guys, we're only annoying the people who don't want to do nothing about it. But for those that are going to do something about it, they welcome it and they move it forward. And at the end, that's what they're supposed to do. So if you're looking at, you know, again, worried about stirring the pot or whatnot, the only people that will get mad at you are the ones that you have to give it to anyway and hold them responsible. So take that as a note. If you're getting mad because I'm writing this and you know why, then I also know why you're getting mad, because you're one of the people that probably don't plan on doing anything with it. So here you go, Mr. Gangi. And here's your name on it once again. Well, I'm just using my name. Connie. I use my name for the scenario, guys. I'm not part of that. You know, it was the first name that came to my mind because I'm the closest to that name. That makes sense. I don't know, guys. All right, guys. So as always, guys, the show is Care Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Both our books on the market, Cage Wizard Coon, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, available on Amazon. As always, guys, stay safe.